Hi, Shauna.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so well, thank you. And it's such a pleasure to have you here. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
I am Shauna Rae, and I am a white, cisgender, heterosexual woman of privilege living in rural Ontario. I am on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Adirondack, and Lune Lenape peoples, and they once used this land as their traditional beaver hunting ground. So I have had an amazing journey exploring my colonial roots. I have racism in my DNA, and it helps inform me of the work that I am always doing and always evolving into. And that leads into what I'm doing now. And I started a media disruption company. That's what I call it. And it's called Radar Media. I'm the CEO, the founder, and I host and produce a podcast called Clearing a New Path. There's also a weekly newsletter by the same name. And I say we, meaning me so far, started a research arm of Radar Media just last year. And I'm really excited about that. We have some new stuff coming out really soon. So that's
Excellent.
me.
Wonderful. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the podcast. What kinds of topics you discuss? What kinds of
It started out, well, the reason I started the podcast in the first place was I was a radio journalist for a decade, and then I worked in communications, PR, community engagement for another decade. And the latest position that I held was working with rural entrepreneurs across Ontario. And what I found was folks from marginalized groups, under-recognized voices, were a box check when I was collecting stories. And I never lost my love for audio storytelling. I never lost my love for hearing from other people and learning from other people. So my now spouse, and I sat down and tried to figure out how much money it would cost for me to leave my job just to pay the basic bills. And I approached a sponsor, and the sponsor uh, agreed to that exact amount of money. So I knew that it was the right thing. And the podcast started. The first season was focused on woman identifying, non binary, and queer entrepreneurs across rural Canada. And then the Freedom Convoy happened. And for me, that meant that I wanted to cover more provocative, urgent issues facing rural Canada. And so now I say that I am trying to build a more united, progressive, feminist, anti racist rural Canada with the podcast and the newsletter. And I've been fortunate enough to have some virtual town halls, and the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce has partnered with me on a couple of those, and I'm super grateful for that.
amazing. And what kind of barriers, or have you had barriers in your entrepreneurial journey?
I would say what I hear and what I see is access to capital. And I think we hear this over and over again with women in particular, but the women that I interviewed, the stories that I heard were a woman who was pregnant went to her bank manager in rural Canada, and the bank manager pointed at her belly and says, "What are we going to do when the baby comes?" And this is not, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This is now. And this is the reality for many people in rural Canada, specifically women. But marginalized folks don't, I mean, you see what's happening in rural Canada with Pride right now. It is scary at the amount of vitriol and, I want to say, intolerance that we're facing. And it's something that we don't want to talk about, but we really need to talk about it. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but those are the kind of uncomfortable conversations that we need to have. So I would say barriers would be uncomfortableness, folks not willing to talk openly about problems, issues, underlying racism, homophobia, transphobia, those sort of things. Those are not barriers for me in particular, but those are the barriers that I need as a white woman of privilege to pick up the fight. Use what I have, the power that I have, the privilege that I have, to be able to, draw attention to it and act as a shield in a lot of cases.
In a fairy tale world, what do you feel the next 5 years should look like for women and non-binary business owners?
In the next 5 years, I hope that folks recognize, whatever size your business is, DEIA. If you're not actively now embedding that into your policies, into your mission statements, into the heartbeat of your business, you will be left behind. There is money to be had. There is innovation to happen. There is productivity to be learned from Black, Indigenous people of color. The vibrancy that different people bring to business is lacking. And if you are not already on that bandwagon, and I say bandwagon, it's actually a shitty term, that it shouldn't be bandwagon. It should be, you should be actively ensuring that you have this in your DNA of your business now. And if you don't, you're already behind. You're already swimming behind the boat. So to me, I think having more women, more people of color, people being able to show up authentically as themselves and roam freely throughout the world, throughout the business world. I mean, even chambers of commerce, look at the Canadian Women's Chamber offering, so many things to even the playing field. That's what equity is. So those things we're going to see in the next 5 years. If your company isn't doing that now, I think that you're going to be left behind. It's part of innovation. It's part of productivity. It's part of pulling apart systems like patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, and colonialism. We're living in a time that all of those things are being pulled apart at the same time. And if you're not actually also in a lot, I have a lot of vulnerable, uncomfortable conversations, and I am apologizing a lot, but it's because I need to unlearn what I was brought up with. And it's not an excuse, but I have to do a lot of listening. I have to do a lot of speaking up, because I have had the comfort of the privilege that I have. And folks need to recognize that too, right now. Because 5 years from now, things are going to look a lot different. The young folks now understand it. So if you want to keep working for them, you have to realize that it's going to be a different world. And I'm excited about that, super excited. And I think everyone should be.
What's one piece of advice that you would like to offer others who would like to follow in your path?
I think what I've learned, well, I am a woman in my mid-50s, and there was a lot of competition between women for positions. And I don't want to have any part of that anymore. It's a trick. It's a capitalist trick to have us compete with one another. I think if we have the most generous assumptions about people, If they're mean or want to compete with you, why? What is there fear at the root of that? Is there hurt? Is there, they're threatened by you? And on the other side of that, though, is boundaries. So that's another thing that I'm not great at and had to learn is you can show people how to treat you just by saying no, just by saying, this is what I will accept, this is what I won't. These are the times when you can reach me. These are the times when I'm unavailable. This is what I do have capacity for, and this is what I don't. If I would have learned that long ago, I think, I wouldn't be at this age realizing that I'm just now having a nervous system that doesn't feel like fight or flight constantly. So take time for yourself. Meditation has saved my life. And never, ever let anyone tell you can't do something, even your family. I think a lot of entrepreneurs get worried and afraid, specifically women, when we don't have cheerleaders, when we don't have folks that know our value, know our worth. Maybe they don't understand what our concept is and they want to save us from ourselves. But if you believe in your heart that it's going to work and this is what you were meant to do, this is your purpose, don't let anyone else tell you that it's not. Trust your instincts. I wish I would have learned that a long time ago too.
What does success look like for you, Shauna?
That's a really interesting question. I started because the way I did, because to me, what would life be like if we took everyone's titles away? If you were walking onto a stage and someone introduced you as a panelist in person by the things that you did in your community, not the monikers after your name or your title, how would that change things, change the way we see each other? I am fortunate enough to be in a sacred circle of Indigenous and non-Indigenous women. And one of the rules of a sacred circle is everyone is equal. Everyone has value, everyone has gifts, and we're all sharing them with one another. So to me, success is being able to lift others up, bring others who aren't being recognized into the spotlight, changing conversations, sparking conversations for change, making sure people are paid a fair wage of any, all of us. And that people can move freely throughout the world as their authentic selves. If I'm alive when that happens, and I'm a small little part of that, I'd be really happy. That would be success for me.
What's kept you feeling driven and feeling motivated, even during the harder parts of your own journey?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that question.
What's kept you feeling driven and motivated, even during the harder parts of your entrepreneurship?
I think when I was really low, so I don't mind saying that there were times when I couldn't pay my hydro bill. There were times when my lights got turned out and I was wondering if I'd be able to get food for me. I would always get food for my dog, but I've had rough times. Absolutely. And I've been on OW, which is Ontario Works welfare, if you will, in Ontario. And I got some extra money, during one of those times, and I was feeling so low. My mom taught me to always give it back, especially when you're feeling low. We were driving back to her house one day and she stopped at a house I didn't recognize. She ran in and came back out, and I said, "What was that?" And she had won a $100 gift certificate from Sears at the time, and it was a women's shelter. And she ran in and dropped it off. And so in those low times for me, I remember taking a little bit of extra money and buying a pack of groceries, a pack of diapers, and taking them to the food bank in my, community. And I came in, and the woman took them immediately and took me aside and said, "We have a family actually that came in this morning that are waiting for these." And so I went out to my car and bawled my eyes out. And so I always think of those situations when things could have been worse. There's always someone worse off. I have so much privilege. And I think recognizing that, giving back in those moments when you're feeling like you're struggling, and being so grateful for what you already have. Like, we have so much. And just being grateful in the moment is really, really helps get you through. Grateful for the people in your life, grateful for, the things that you have, and the support that you have. There's many hands at our backs. They may not be physical hands. They may be, memories of people. It may be, if you believe in spirits, it may be, lots of things, but there are always people and entities at our back supporting us if we throw the support and the karma into the fold. I believe that.
That's beautiful. Thanks for that. Um, So my next question, what made you sign up for the Canadian Women's Chamber?
What did I, sorry, what?
What made you change? What made you sign up for the Canadian Women's Chamber? Excuse me.
I met Nancy at a summit, the Equal Future Summit, the very first one in Ottawa last year. However, before that, I reached out to the Canadian Women's Chamber to ask for their assistance in hosting these virtual town halls. Immediately said yes. How can we help? The support has been phenomenal, and I became a member, obviously, but the work that the organization is doing, specifically, ensuring that everyone can be a member. I think the things that Nancy and her team are fighting for are what I believe in. So it's an easy organization to support, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
Well, what what's your area of expertise, and how can people reach out to you?
I'm always happy to bounce ideas off folks. I have certainly given out my platforms for folks to try out podcasting. I use a platform called Riverside FM. If anyone is looking to use a platform to record remotely, it's a really great one. And if you would like to try it out, I never use all the minutes that I pay for, so I'm happy to help you. But I mean, it's mostly encouragement. I really am happy to encourage folks, especially folks, again, from underrecognized organizations, groups, specifically. That truth and reconciliation is really important to me. So Indigenous folks in particular, if any Indigenous folks would like some help, I'm happy to do that. But ask. I'm happy to answer questions and provide support for sure.
And how can people reach you?
I have a website, radarmedia.co. The podcast has a website for it as well, clearinganewpathpodcast.com. You can email me, Shauna at radarmedia.co, C-O. Yeah, I would love to hear from you and hear what you're up to.